A question I've been getting a lot lately is how do I publish my web app and specifically a React 3 Fiber web app to the internet, and how do I get my own domain name? How do I host it for people to see it? This is especially common when people are following along with the Code Sandbox tutorials, and it's all fine and good to be able to follow a tutorial in a Code Sandbox, but what's the procedure for publishing the page? I'm going to show you how I would do it real quick. And it's pretty easy because we're going to use Netlify to publish our React app. And this process would work for any type of React app and doesn't have to have React 3 Fiber in it, but it's going to be a really nice way for us to get our site up on the internet. So let's get started. Now, the first thing you're going to need is to go into a console on your computer or a terminal. And you can use any terminal, whether it's on a Mac and you're using ZSH and iTerm, or if you're on your Windows computer, I would really recommend downloading Windows Terminal because it's by far the best terminal experience on Windows that I've found. But if you don't have that, you could also just use PowerShell or the built-in Windows command tool. In any case, you want to get into a terminal and you need to have Node installed. So if you've never installed Node before, I have another tutorial specifically about that. I'll link that below and you can check it out. And once you finish getting Node installed, you should be able to run this command and see a version number come back. Now, if you already have that, then you're ready to go. So the first step is, let's create a new React app. And to do that, we can use the npx command from Node. npx is a way to run Node packages directly from the registry. It'll install them for you, but you don't have to install them first and then run them. You can just do it with this one npx command. So you can run the create React app command, and it takes one argument, and that's the name for the directory and the app that you want to create. So I'm going to call mine 3D Grid because what we're going to publish today is going to be this tutorial project that I've made in the past on Code Sandbox. So we're going to take this project and we're going to put it up on its own domain name and host it just like we would in a production application. So going back to our terminal, we can run that command, and npm is going to go through the installation process, and then create React app is going to create a sort of project boilerplate for us. And we'll just give this a second here to run. And as soon as it's done, we'll end up with a new directory called 3D Grid that we'll be able to switch into to continue. And it does take a minute or two, depending on how many packages it has to install. Getting closer now. Any minute now. Okay, cool. So happy hacking, it says, and we're ready to go. It tells you how to get started down here at the bottom. We suggest that you begin by typing cd 3D grid. And then you can type yarn start. Or if that doesn't work, you might not have yarn installed. You could also run npm run start. And that is going to start up the boilerplate React app. Now, we don't have anything 3D in here yet. We don't have React 3 Fiber or Three.js in here. So let's go ahead and do that next. Let's do Control-C to kill the dev server, and then we can do npm install -s to save it to our package.json. And then we're going to need to install React 3 Fiber. And finally, let's go ahead and get, oh, and I'm sorry, the new path for React 3 Fiber is React 3/fiber. Watch out for our typos here. And then let's also do React 3 Dre because we used it in the code sandbox. All right, so you run that from inside the 3D good directory that we just created and give it a couple minutes again. It's going to go ahead and install those packages and all the dependencies for those packages on our local machine. Great, so once you get all of that installed, you're ready to go and open up the project in a text editor of your choice. I'm going to use VS Code, and you'll notice in the package.json that now you have a couple of new dependencies like React 3 Dry and React 3 Fiber, and also 3. And that's going to be everything we need to start writing a React 3 Fiber application. And I'm not going to write anything new in this tutorial because we're all just about publishing here. I have already copied over some files from one of the code sandboxes. So we have here a React 3 Fiber canvas, and this should all look familiar to you if you've gone through any of the other tutorials. But in any case, just write whatever you want and create your app. And then once you're ready, and even before you're ready, really, as you're writing it, when you're developing on your machine, you're generally going to want to run dev server. So you can always have npm run start open and make sure that your app is looking the way you want it. Once everything looks good, then we're ready to go ahead and publish it. I noticed one thing that I'd like to change real quick. So the title is just React app. So let's go in and change the title. So we'll change the title here in the index.html under the public directory. We'll call it React 3 Fiber. Let's call it transforms example. All right. And the cool thing about a Create React app is that it will do hot reloading, and you should see all of your changes that you make in your editor reflected in real time here. So that's cool. So I make sure everything still works the way we expect. Great, looks good. So now we're ready to start the publishing process. We have this folder on our computer and we want to get it out onto the public internet. So how are we going to do that? So to do that, you're going to need a GitHub account. If you already have a GitHub account, you can, of course, skip this step and pick up at the point where we are publishing our repository to GitHub. But if you don't have one, this is, kind of a big step for you as a developer, because getting a GitHub account is really handy. The reason being, GitHub is where a lot of open source projects live, and you can see their source code. You can also use it to store your own source code in what's known as a repository. We're not going to go too deep into how Git works or how GitHub works, but just know that GitHub is a place where you can push up your code and it will kind of store it for you and also keep track of any changes that you make so that you can undo them. Anyways, let's sign up for an account and we'll see how we can use it to get our site published to the internet on Netlify. First, you're just going to need to put in an email address. So I'm going to use this one, hello@codeworkshop.dev. And once we click sign up, it's going to ask us to start this little wizard, and we'll create a password here. And a username. And we'll just do no for emails. And then a little CAPTCHA here. Once you have a GitHub account, the next step is to push our code to what's known as a Git repository on GitHub. A lot of developers use the command line to do this, and if you're already doing that, then feel free. I'm going to show you how to get GitHub Desktop in case you're brand new to the world of Git. This is the quickest and easiest way for you to probably create a new repo and then push our code to it. So to get GitHub Desktop, you can just go to desktop.github.com and then click download for Windows. It'll download a file to your computer, and then you can open that and you'll see something that looks a lot like this. We need to create a new repository using the directory on our computer that we created earlier. So to find that directory, we can click on this area in the top left, and then we'll have an option to add. And under there, we can create a new repository. Oh, I'm sorry, we actually want to add an existing repository and navigate to the location on disk where we created our project. In my case, it's going to be a little weird because I'm using the Windows subsystem for Linux. But just navigate to wherever it is that you created this directory earlier when we ran create react app. So once I've found that directory, I just want to select that folder and then click add repository. You should see a new repository created, and it will present you with all of the new files that you've created in that directory. All of the files will be marked as new since it's a very brand new repository, and that's fine. The first thing we need to do is create what's called a commit in Git, and a commit just tells Git that we're ready to accept all of our changes and add them to a branch. Don't worry too much about what a branch is. Specifically, in this case, we'll be adding them to the main branch, which is also considered the default branch. And that's important because once we go to Netlify and connect our GitHub account to it, Netlify is going to look at the main branch and look at the code that's there and use that to deploy the website. So we can just create a commit called init commit and click commit here. So once that's done, GitHub Desktop will actually prompt you to publish your repository to GitHub automatically. It knows that it's not on GitHub yet. So you can push that button, publish. You have the option to either keep the code private or public. This is up to you if you want your code to be open source and everyone to be able to see it. You can uncheck that box. I will uncheck the box since this is a public open source repository, and then click Publish Repository. It'll take just a second and it'll be uploading all of our files to GitHub. If you were to go back to your GitHub account and search for the name of your repository you just created, you should see it in GitHub now. That's great. So now that it's on GitHub, your code is all version controlled and backed up and nice and safe and ready for us to connect it to Netlify to actually publish. Now that we have a Git repo created with our code, it's going to be pretty easy to get from there to having a website hosted publicly on the internet with Netlify. Netlify is built in a way where it can connect directly to that Git repo and monitor it for changes and create builds of our web app from the repo. First thing you're going to need to do is sign up. It will give you the option to sign up with one of the following, and these are all Git providers, and you want to select GitHub since that's where we created our repository. And in my case, I already have an account, and you should also already have an account if you just followed the last part of this video. So just go ahead and sign in with your sign-in information. And Netlify should log you in. I already have a couple of sites deployed here, but you probably won't, and you won't see anything in this list, but you should still see this new site from Git button. Click on that and then select GitHub for your continuous deployment Git provider. Since we just logged in with Git, it should already have you logged in, and you should see a list of all of your Git repositories. Find the one that we just created. Mine was called 3D Grit. Select that, and then go ahead and take a look at these input boxes here. They should be filled in correctly for you by default if you use Create React App like I did earlier. The branch to deploy is whatever the default branch for Git is. Usually, I was saying main earlier because GitHub has started switching all branches to main. This repository is still on master, but in any case, you'll see some branch name here, and that should be fine. And then you'll also see what's called a build command and a publish directory. So these are auto-filled in because Netlify detected that we were using a React app with Create React App. The way that Netlify knows what those commands should be is that Create React App creates some commands for building the production version of your app, and build is the command that builds the app, and then the output of running that command ends up in the build directory. If you'd like to just go ahead and verify that, we can do it by running that command on our local machine. So if I were to run npm on build here, you'll see React say that it's going to create an optimized production build. And this can take a minute or two. So let's just wait for that. So now that that's done, we'll see this nice output here, and notice how it says that it created these files under a build directory. And if we were to inspect our project directory, now we'll see a folder called build. If we look inside of that directory, you'll see all of the files that we need to run our app, including this index.html, which is now at the root. And this is handy because so Netlify now is going to be able to serve up our website directly from this build directory. And that's what publish directory, from the publish directory, which happens to be build in our case. This is simply the static root of the HTML. So we know that this is all good. We can hit deploy site. And you'll get this really cool output here telling you the status of your build. You'll see down here that we're starting up a production deploy. And if we click on that, we can get this nice output showing us the progress. It's currently resolving the NPM packages and fetching them. And we'll be waiting another minute here while it runs the build. So after about a minute or so, you should see some output that says that the process is complete. You'll see the Netlify build complete line, and eventually on line 154 here, we have site is live. Once you see that, you know that the build process has been completed successfully, and you can go back to your site overview. And then up here at the top, we'll have a link. And this is a subdomain where Netlify has published our site for free. If we click on that, we should see our Create React app running happily. And you could send this link to anyone and they would be able to get there and see it. Now, that's cool to have this publicly hosted and it's free and it's really fast and awesome, but maybe we want to have a domain name for our application. Let's do that as a final step, and then we'll wrap this tutorial up. When I want to buy a domain name, I generally use domains.google, which is Google Domains, and they're a pretty good provider. They don't have some of the perverse incentives that companies like GoDaddy and even Namecheap kind of have these days, since they don't really need to make money off their domain sales. It's a pleasant experience, pretty quick and easy, so highly recommended. Just go to domains.google and then you can search for the domain you want to use. I'm going to try React 3 Fiber examples. And it looks like I can buy the .com, so I'll select the .com. Click Add to Cart. Go to cart. We'll leave privacy protection on and auto renew on. We're not gonna go for the upsells, and then we'll just check out. So once you have the domain you want to use, the final step is setting up Netlify to use that domain. In order to do that, you want to go back into your project and go to the main site overview tab and click on domain settings. At the very top of domain settings, you'll find this add custom domain button. Click on that and then put in your domain. So we'll use r3fexamples.com and we'll click verify. It's going to say r3fexamples.com already has an owner. Is it you? Yes, add domain. And you'll start to see some stuff happen. Namely, it will appear, but it'll be kind of grayed out. And it will have this yellow warning message, check DNS configuration. So click on that, check DNS configuration, and it's going to give you a couple of options for how to make your site work. Now, there's two different options. You can either add an A record to the Google Domains DNS, or you could switch your DNS servers from Google domains to using Netlify's DNS servers. I would honestly recommend switching over to use Netlify's DNS servers, because if you do that, it can do some performance optimizations for you, and it just works a little bit better. So select this second option here, set up Netlify DNS for our 3F examples, or in your case, whatever the name of your domain is. And then just step through steps. The DNS records for Netlify sites will be configured automatically. That's fine. We can continue. And then finally, step 3 is activate Netlify DNS. And it will tell you exactly what to do, which is log in to your domain provider and change your name servers to the following. So in our case, that means heading back over to Google Domains, where we purchased our domain from. And it said that we want to change our DNS servers. So let's click on the DNS tab on the left-hand side bar and look right at the top here. Currently it's set to default name servers. This means it's using the Google Domains name servers. We want to switch these, so let's change over to custom name servers. We will need to look back here and one at a time copy and paste these name servers into this list. So let's go ahead and get all 4 of those. You can click add another name server to add the 3rd and the 4th one. And then this one is DNS4. Once you have all of those changed, hit save. Even after hitting save, these settings still aren't applied. You'll see at the top a yellow warning box that says your domain is not using these settings. Click switch to these settings. You should now see these DNS settings are active, changes are published immediately, but they may take time to propagate. Now, this is true. It usually for me only takes about half an hour, although in theory it could take much longer than that. Even up to 24 hours, although that's unusual. You'll just have to wait a couple minutes and try the domain over and over until it works. So eventually, after a little while, and in this case, it really only took maybe 7 minutes, and a lot of times that's the case, you'll be greeted with your website on your domain. And at this point, congratulations, you're essentially done. The great thing about Netlify is that it not only is hosting your site for you, but it also provisioned an SSL certificate, so it is encrypted and protected, and it's being hosted on some really great servers that are on a CDN, so it loads pretty quickly. Now, I do want to add one caveat to this tutorial. In this tutorial, we used Create React App to publish our site. You may have heard of the concepts server-side rendering or static site generation as they regard to React apps, and how great they are at producing performant, production-ready websites. And that's true. Most of the time I would publish a React app using either maybe Next.js or Gatsby to build a static site. But the thing is, with React 3 Fiber and really any Three.js based application with a lot of 3D elements, you're not going to get quite as much of a benefit there, because you can't statically render any of the 3D stuff that's inside of the canvas. What static site generation and server-side rendering are really good for are, constructing all of the HTML in advance so that the web server can reply with HTML and the browser can get things drawn to the screen quicker, and it can defer the loading of all that JavaScript in a React app. For a React 3 Fiber app, there's really no way around it. You're going to need the JavaScript to draw to the canvas. So it's not that much of an advantage to statically generate. Now, if you're going to mix 3D elements with a lot of other stuff, sure. And maybe we could do a tutorial another time about embedding React 3 Fiber scenes in a Gatsby or a Next.js app. But for now, if you just want to get a cool 3D thing out there and put it on a domain, this is a great way to do it. I hope it's been helpful to someone at least. Go out there, give it a shot, and give me your feedback in the comments. Thanks. Bye.